Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a world where the glow of electric lights is still a fantasy. And your options for falling asleep range from a tepid cup of milk to a dose of something that would definitely get your pharmacist arrested today. The year is 1873. You're wearing a dressing gown that weighs more than your cousin. The fire is crackling low in the grate, and your bedroom smells faintly of mothballs and fireplace soot. Outside, the fog is thick, curling around gas lamps like ghostly ribbon. You're exhausted, but your mind refuses to shut off. Perhaps it's the stress of your unpaid tailor bill, or maybe it's the looming thought that you might have contracted nerves from reading too many serialized penny dreadfuls. Either way, sleep won't come. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere interesting, post your location and local time below. I love seeing where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach for the pewter teapot on your nightstand. Inside is warm milk, not surprising, but this milk has a little something extra. Just a drop or two of laudanum, that beloved Victorian catch-all for everything from toothaches to broken hearts. Made from opium and alcohol, laudanum was sold in beautiful glass bottles, often with elegant calligraphy labels. It looked more like perfume than poison. You swirl the contents gently and sip. Your eyelids flutter a little. It's working. Or maybe it's just the warmth. You place a slice of dry toast midnight toast, as the trendsetters call it, onto a floral china saucer. The Victorians believed toast helped weigh down the stomach, quieting restless dreams. A full belly meant a full night's sleep. That was the theory anyway. Of course, that same logic was also used to justify eating beef sandwiches at 11 p.m. The fire crackles again. Somewhere, a coal settles and hisses. Across Britain, laudanum is in nearly every household. Doctors prescribe it for babies. Artists take it for inspiration. And ladies of leisure keep tiny crystal vials tucked into their embroidered handbags. It's the era's miracle drug. And yet, you're not exactly sure how many drops you added tonight. That label is smudged. One drop too many, and, well, you probably won't survive this. Historians still argue whether the Victorian reliance on laudanum was more about ignorance or quiet desperation. After all, insomnia wasn't just an annoyance in those days. It was a potential sign of madness. If you couldn't sleep, people whispered, "Something's off." You might get sent to the countryside. Or worse, to a rest cure. So you sip, and sip again. There's a delicate clink as you place the teacup back on its saucer. You can feel a slight heaviness behind your eyes now, a kind of warm molasses settling into your thoughts. But just to be safe, you've followed the full nighttime regimen. On your bedside table lies a dried lavender bundle, believed to soothe the mind. A few drops of valerian root oil are dabbed onto your handkerchief. Not too much, or you'll smell like an apothecary shelf. There's also the candle. You've trimmed it precisely to avoid the dreaded sputter wake. A tall beeswax candle in a silver holder, its flame steady and hypnotic. Some say watching a single flame helps slow the breath. Others say it just distracts from the creaks in the house and the rats in the wall. You think you hear something shift, but you're too mellow to care. Outside your lace-curtained window, the fog is thickened. It swirls gently, illuminated in patches by gaslight. A hansom cab clatters past, wheels echoing on damp cobblestones. Inside the cab, perhaps another sleepless Londoner, heading to their chemist for a bottle of night mixture. Maybe they've already tried the warm port and sugar cure, or the less popular gin and pickle method. Yes, that was a real thing. No, it didn't work. A tiny bell rings as the wind moves your door, just enough to nudge it open. You close it with your slippered foot and adjust your shawl. You wonder briefly if Queen Victoria herself has trouble sleeping. Probably not. After all, she has a private physician who likely mixes her laudanum with rosewater and royal jelly. You, on the other hand, have to make do with the corner chemist who smells like boiled cabbage and wears spectacles stained with God knows what. You sigh. You feel floaty now. The toast sits in your stomach like a stone. A warm, sleepy stone. The milk is gone. The laudanum hums in your bloodstream. Not quite a whisper, not quite a shout, but here's the twist: Victorians weren't just casually dabbling with sleep potions. They truly believed insomnia was a moral failing, a disorder of discipline. If you couldn't sleep, perhaps you read too many novels, or lacked evening prayers, or you guessed it spent too much time thinking improper thoughts. You were encouraged to confess, to walk, to avoid anything stimulating, including horror of horrors cheese. That's right. Cheese before bed was believed to summon nightmares. Blue cheese? Absolutely not. Stilton? Only if you wanted to dream about skeletons and Sindot. So tonight, you avoided cheese. You lit your lavender candle. You sipped your soporific milk, laced with liquid oblivion. You said your quiet prayers, though you might have skipped a line or two. And now, finally, as your pulse slows and your head drifts toward the hand-stitched pillow embroidered with initials that don't quite match yours, a second-hand heirloom, no doubt you begin to feel it. That slow, merciful descent into half-dream, where the clock ticks just a little softer, where the candlelight flickers against your closed eyelids, where the air is warm and thick with the scent of opiates, starch, and lavender. You've survived the first night, not barely. The next night, you do everything the same mostly. Same warm milk, same lack of cheese, same half-prayer mumbled more out of superstition than faith. But tonight, you add a new element. The strange brass contraption resting at the foot of your bed. It's called a sleep cage, though that name doesn't quite do it justice. A polished brass frame arches like a ribcage above your mattress, fitted with slender rods, straps, and somewhat unsettlingly, 2 heavy linen sandbags tied at either end. No, this isn't a torture device. It's therapy. Victorian therapy. You slide underneath the contraption and position the sandbags across your chest. The weight presses downward, but not uncomfortably, almost like a hug from a particularly anxious aunt. The Victorians believed gentle pressure across the chest and limbs encouraged relaxation. In a way, they were onto something. Weighted blankets are still used today, albeit without the vaguely funereal brass frame. The room is dim, lit only by your bedside candle, which tonight burns shorter and softer. You've made sure of it. You stare at the ceiling, chest gently compressed, and breathe in deeply. The blanket is heavy 2-quilted wool with a down core, layered with lace, topped with a crocheted throw. The kind of ensemble that could flatten a child. You feel like a sandwich. A warm, sleepy sandwich. Sleep cages were originally designed for patients with hysterical fits or nervous twitching. Doctors noticed that when patients were held still either by leather straps or, in more genteel circles, weighted linens, they slept longer. You didn't want to be strapped to your bed, though. That implied madness. Instead, your contraption is purely restorative. There's a creak as you shift. The frame shudders slightly. One of the sandbags slips, giving you a gentle thud to the ribs. You reposition it. You're not mad, just a little restless. Of course, sleep contraptions weren't just for nerves. Wealthier Victorians sometimes had beds custom designed with mattress pulleys, cooling sheets, and even wind-up mechanisms that rocked the bed like an oversized crib. You, being firmly middle class, made do with the second-hand brass cage your cousin left you in her will. She used it for migraines. Or maybe to keep the cats from lying on her chest. No one's quite sure. Historians still argue whether these bed frames were more symbolic than scientific, part placebo, part performance. After all, if you were rich enough to own a bed that looked like medical furniture, you probably had the luxury of trying to sleep, rather than working a 14-hour factory shift and collapsing into unconsciousness. Next to a coal scuttle, you nestle deeper beneath the blanket. The weight helps, oddly. Your limbs feel less jittery. It's like being wrapped in a cocoon that whispers, "She?" No more worrying about whether the chimney sweep was actually 12 or just short. Tonight, you've also placed a mirror on your nightstand, tilted slightly to reflect the candlelight back toward your face. Some sleep guides suggested soft illumination could mimic moonlight and promote slumberous reflection. You aren't convinced. The mirror makes your half-lidded eyes look like something from a spirit photograph. Still, you keep it there. You shift again. The frame creaks. The sandbag slides. Again, the bed frame is sturdy, but it groans under all the enhancements, extra pillows to raise your feet, a lavender-filled sachet tied to the headboard, a bowl of salt water under the bed to draw out restless humors. You've followed the advice columns to the letter. Tonight's toast was cinnamon, by the way. For gentle stimulation. You think about sleep cures popular in the colonies. In India, British officers imported bed fans, mechanical punkahs waved by servants, or, later, by rope and pulley automata. They swore by the rhythmic swoosh. In Egypt, sleep tents were scented with camphor and myrrh, supposedly to calm the blood. You don't have a servant, or a fan, or any camphor, just a slightly moldy sachet and a dream. Your bedroom creaks again. Houses always sound louder when you're trying to sleep. Somewhere, water drips. Possibly from your neighbor's busted plumbing, or possibly from that corner of your ceiling that never dries. Outside, a dog barks once and falls silent. A bell rings far off, then stops. The city exhales. You reach over and pat the sandbag gently, reassuring it. "Stay," you whisper. It does not listen. To be fair, not all weighted therapies were so benign. Some institutions used full-body swaddling or immobilization sheets to enforce sleep on particularly difficult patients. You read once about a doctor who invented a sleep cloak that zipped up to the chin and tied around the ankles. It was eventually banned, mainly because patients kept fainting. But in your little room, under your brass cage and your layered quilts, you are warm. A little itchy, but warm. One of your arms has gone numb. You ignore it. You think about your neighbor, Miss Templeton, who claims she no longer suffers from insomnia because she sleeps upside-down head at the foot of the bed, feet near the headboard. She swears it tricks the spine. You're not sure your spine is that gullible dot your other neighbor keeps a night parrot. It talks in its sleep. That probably doesn't help. You yawn. The candle's flame wobbles as a draft sneaks beneath the door. You consider getting up to shove a blanket against the gap, but your body is already accepting the weight, the pressure, the quiet ritual. This might work, it might not. Either way, it's quieter than last night's laudanum haze, and you'll take that one more breath. Deep in, heavy out. The mirror reflects the flicker of your eyes. The sandbag remains, finally, in place. The world feels like its exhaling. Sleep is coming. Not all at once, but gently, like fog rolling in, like a blanket you forgot you were wearing, like a brass cage that holds nothing but peace. The next night, the brass frame stays tucked in the corner. You're giving your ribs a break. Instead, your focus shifts to something more. Culinary. You're in the kitchen before bed, hunched over a small saucepan, stirring slowly with a tarnished spoon. Steam curls upward in gentle ribbons, and the scent is, well, not exactly inviting. Earthy, like boiled mushrooms and wilted lettuce. A hint of garden after rain, but less romantic. The recipe is old, older than your grandmother's copper kettles. Handwritten in looping script, snail syrup for nervous slumber. You're making it properly because the alternative is insomnia. And you're desperate. The Victorian belief in natural tonics was unshakable. Snails, being slow and sticky, were seen as inherently calming. A spoonful of syrup made from slowly stewed garden snails, strained through muslin and mixed with honey or molasses, was recommended for fretful children, widows with midnight nerves, and occasionally dogs that barked at nothing. You pour the mixture into a ceramic dish and let it cool. It looks like melted caramel. If caramel had a secret life crawling under stones. You try not to think about the texture as you spoon it into your mouth. It's thick, slick, and surprisingly sweet. 1 spoonful. 2. You gag a little on the third. But you've read somewhere, possibly in Lady Trumbull's Illustrated Guide to Moral, sleep that 3 is the magic number. Victorians adored odd ingestibles. Cures weren't just things you drank. Some you rubbed on your temples. Some you smoked. Some were inserted in places we won't talk about in a bedtime story. But this one? It's all about snails. You sit back in your creaky chair, letting the syrup settle. Your stomach isn't thrilled. You're not sure whether you feel drowsy or just slightly ill. Historians still argue whether snail syrup actually worked or simply acted as a placebo so unpleasant you couldn't possibly stay awake and taste it again. Of course, snail-based tonics weren't the only gooey things on offer. There was sleep jelly, a viscous concoction made from gelatin, rosewater, and sometimes rabbit marrow. Yes, marrow. The Victorians never met a part of an animal they didn't think could be turned into a sedative. Then there were syrupy tinctures of lettuce, lacticarium, sometimes called lettuce opium. Sounds innocent, right? Except when overbrewed, it could act as a mild hallucinogen. A lettuce trip. You imagine yourself talking to a cabbage in the corner of your room. Maybe not tonight. Returning upstairs, you hold your stomach gently, as if carrying a small animal that might escape. Your bed awaits, thankfully snail-free. You fluff your pillow and note the absence of the sleep cage with deep gratitude. Tonight, you're trying a slippery sleep tonic rubbed onto your wrists. This one contains extract of quince, orange blossom, and castor oil, because if snails aren't involved, oil certainly will be. Victorian apothecaries believed the wrists, like the temples and soles of the feet, absorbed sleep-aiding tonics faster. You rub it in slowly until your skin shines like polished stone. The smell is vaguely citrusy, with a medicinal aftershock. Not unpleasant. Not relaxing either. Outside your window, someone is singing. Badly. A drunk sailor, perhaps, or just your landlord. You close the shutters and pull your curtain tighter. You're trying to dream, not audition for the West End. You lie down and breathe deeply. The syrup still clings faintly to your tongue. Your wrists are tacky. You feel both slightly sedated and irrationally alert. Like a cat on antihistamines, there's something soothing about the strangeness of it all. You think about all the Victorian housewives making their own syrups, simmering pot after pot on their wood-fired stoves, their hands stained with herbs and who knows what, praying for one full night of undisturbed rest. Not everyone had access to fancy sleeping draughts. In poorer areas, people chewed hop flowers or steeped dried dandelion leaves into tea. One woman in Yorkshire was rumored to bury a potato under her mattress to absorb her night terrors. You wonder what happened when the potato started to sprout. Dreams of roots? The room grows still. You're warm. Your body isn't quite heavy, but it's quiet, settled. The syrup hums inside you like a gentle vibration. Your thoughts begin to soften at the edges. blurring like ink in the rain dot, and just as you're on the cusp of sleep-thunk, a soft sound. A dull knock. Probably the neighbor's cat or a wayward bird. You ignore it, thunk, there it is again. You sit up, annoyed, and grab your candle. You open the window, nothing, the street is empty, no cat, no bird. Just the cold night air and a single lamp flickering 2 houses down. You close the window and crawl back under the blankets, thunk, this time it's from inside, your heart skips. Just once. But then you remember. The syrup bottle. It rolled. You placed it on the uneven edge of your knitstand. You chuckle quietly. The syrup bottle drunk on its own success. You reposition it, breathe in again, and close your eyes. No more laudanum. No brass frame. No lavender sachet hanging by the window. Just the old-fashioned snail syrup working its odd little magic. And the wrist rub, still sticky. Your breath slows. The syrup's work is slow, methodical. Not the knockout punch of opiates, not the heavy weight of sandbags, but a gentle descent. You drift, finally, into a sleep flavored slightly with honey, garden snails, and Victorian optimism. Tonight, your bed looks more like a laboratory, or maybe a crime scene depending on how forgiving your taste in decor is. There's wire coiled near your pillow, a strange belt contraption resting neatly beside your book of Psalms, and a folded card instructing you to fasten securely before midnight. You're trying out one of the Victorian era's more shocking trends, literally. Electric belts. Yes, electricity. That mysterious, invisible force Victorian inventors couldn't get enough of. They were zapping tumors, tickling muscles, and yes, treating insomnia. You're wearing the latest model. A thick leather strap lined with copper nodes, powered by a tiny galvanic cell tucked into a pouch at your hip. A salesman promised it would restore equilibrium to the nervous soul and balance the current of troubled thoughts. You're not entirely convinced. Still, you fasten the belt around your waist, tugging it snugly over your nightshirt. There's a tiny jolt, just enough to make you flinch and mutter something extremely un-Victorian. Victorians loved pseudo-scientific gadgets. Sleep was no longer just about calmness. It was about balance, energy, flow, the belief that the body, like a telegraph line, could carry current. If you suffered from sleeplessness, perhaps your internal battery was depleted. Maybe your spiritual circuit board had a loose wire. Historians still argue whether these devices delivered any real current, or if the shock was more psychological than physiological. But to the sleepless, hope was a tonic all its own. You sit gingerly on the bed, legs extended, the belt humming against your belly like a bee with bad intentions. It's not painful yet, just alerting. That's the opposite of what you want, but the pamphlet insists that the stimulation is temporary. The body adjusts, it reads. The mind relaxes. The sleep comes. Sure, you're not alone in your electric exploration. Victorian catalogs offered all manner of wearable shock therapy, magnetic corsets, galvanic slippers, and yes, even magnetic undergarments. The underwear promised to energize the loins, which sounds less sleep-inducing and more like a terrible idea. Still, many tried it. You're sticking with the belt. For now, you lie back carefully, afraid of accidentally electrocuting yourself on the brass bed frame. Is that a thing? Probably. The belt gives a quick pulse-like static, then settles. You try to ignore it. Outside. It's raining. A soft patter against the window glass. The gas lights flicker slightly in the wind, casting watery shadows across the ceiling. You listen to the rain and imagine it tapping in Morse code. S. L-E-E. You almost chuckle. The belt buzzes again. You jump. Okay, so maybe. Relaxing is a stretch. Still, you press forward. You've taken a small dose of valerian, No syrup tonight, and you've rubbed a drop of nerve oil behind each ear. A blend of bergamot and something that smells suspiciously like furniture polish dot. You remember reading about Thomas Edison's nighttime habits. Despite inventing the electric light bulb, he believed sleep was for the weak. Slept only a few hours a night. Wrote in a standing chair. Swore by catnaps on the floor. That makes you feel slightly better about your own chaotic bedtime. The belt pulses again, then goes still. You think it might have died. Or maybe that's part of the process. Inactivity, the instructions say, means the nervous system is realigning. That's comforting. If vague you stretch, you're warm now. The buzzing has stopped. Or maybe you've adapted. Your nerves feel slightly fuzzy, like static snow on an old TV. You wiggle your toes. Still alive, some Victorians, wary of electricity, went with magnetic therapy instead. You recall your cousin Ellen's obsession with a magnetized headband. She insisted it calmed her mental whirlwinds. She also thought her dog could read minds. So grain of salt. The belt buzzes faintly once more, and then blessedly falls silent for good. You lie there, belt-clad and hopeful. Maybe this will be the night. You close your eyes. Of course. Your brain chooses this moment to become very interested in obscure thoughts. Did you leave the kettle on? Why did the chemist look at you funny? What exactly does energize the loins mean? You take a deep breath. This is fine. You're fine. You try not to. Think about all the other devices you passed up, like the somnambulist's head cradle, a padded brace. That kept sleepers upright and motionless. Popular in overly warm bedrooms where lying flat was medically discouraged. Or the pulmonic fan, a bedside gadget designed to waft medicated air into your face all night, often with questionable ingredients like ammonia or camphorated alcohol. No, thank you. You shift gently under your blanket. The leather belt creaks. Your skin is slightly clammy beneath it, but something in you feels tingly, not in a terrible way. More like the way your foot feels when it's almost done being asleep. That could be progress. Or nerve damage. Hard to say. You decide not to worry. Your eyes begin to flutter closed, thoughts winding down. The room is quiet, the rain steady, the belt finally inert. It feels strangely like you're being held. Not by a person, but by purpose. As if all your Victorian effort, your syrup and oils and inventions, have finally tricked your brain into surrender. You take one final breath. The belt doesn't buzz. You smile. Sleep. You wake up stiff but victorious. The belt did something. Whether it was calming or just mildly electrocution adjacent, you're not sure. Tonight, though, you're setting aside wires and syrups. You want something gentler, quieter. Less jolt, more lull. You've brought up a new contraption from the cellar. A polished wooden box, not much larger than a bread loaf. Inside, a delicate mechanism of springs, gears, and a rotating dial ticks steadily like a content beetle. This is your clockwork sleep trainer, a marvel of 19th century ingenuity designed to hypnotize the restless. You wind it slowly with a small brass key, then set it on your nightstand. The instructions say to lie back, fix your eyes on the spinning brass disc, and breathe with the ticking. Simple, right? You're not so sure. The device, known among enthusiasts as the hypnoscope, was advertised as a mechanical lullaby for the overburdened mind. As the disc begins to rotate, a soft click punctuates each turn. Tick, tick, tick. There's something soothing about the repetition. Predictable, measured, like the heartbeat of a tired god. Victorians were enamored with hypnotism. Not the stage show variety, but the clinical kind, the belief that sleep could be induced not by drugs, but by suggestion and rhythm. Hypnotic therapy was even used in hospitals for pain control. Some doctors swore it could cure addiction, heartbreak, and of course, insomnia. Historians still argue whether hypnosis in this era truly worked, or if it was simply the art of making a person very, very bored until they passed out. You're trying the boredom route. The device ticks on. You match your breathing to it. In, 2 ticks. Out, 3 ticks. Your eyelids feel heavy. You stare into the slow turn of the disc, mesmerized. It reflects your candlelight in rhythmic flashes. Like a miniature lighthouse dot, you start to feel a bit silly, like you're waiting for the pocket watch to swing in front of your face and someone to whisper. You are getting very sleepy. But no one whispers. Not even the house. Just the tick-tick dot to enhance the effect. You've prepared a mild herbal tea chamomile and passion flower, steeped for exactly 8 minutes. Any longer and it turns bitter. You sip slowly, letting the warmth bloom in your chest. It tastes floral, slightly earthy, but familiar. Like safety Victorians sometimes brewed slumber teas with more daring ingredients. Hendane, which is mildly toxic, or Bitura, which is extremely toxic. You're sticking with the safer leaves. No need to hallucinate a ghost in the wardrobe. You set the teacup down. The ticking continues. Your breathing slows. Tick, tick, close your eyes. Tick, tick, relax your jaw. Tick, tick, you open one eye. The disc spins, close it again. Your thoughts begin to blur into one another, like ink smudged on damp paper. You think of river currents, of horse hooves on wet stone, of your uncle's oddly shaped umbrella, then of nothing in particular dot, but just as you're drifting clank, the mechanism has wound down. It jerks to a stop with a mechanical hiccup that startles you upright. You blink, silence your brain, unfortunately, is now awake again. Victorian sleep guides warned of this. Mechanical aids must be kept in perfect order, wrote Dr. T.E. Biddlecombe in 1859, or they may betray the user with false promises. You didn't know betrayal could tick. But here we are. Sighing, you reset the mechanism. This time, you wind it less tightly. It starts again, more slowly. Tick, tick, tick. You close your eyes again, leaning into the rhythm. You pair the ticking with visualization. Candlelight reflecting on wallpaper. A breeze rustling a linen curtain. The faint rustle of paper, the kind of paper used in old, well-loved novels. You imagine a scene, a Victorian library, high ceilings, velvet drapes, and a chaise longue calling your name. You lie back on it in your mind. The clockwork ticking continues. Somewhere in the room, a book closes softly. You're falling, not physically, but mentally. Your thoughts no longer form words. They stretch, like taffy in warm sun. You forget what day it is, what the contraption is called. You even forget about the tea. This is the goal, to drift without direction, to coast without thought. Tick, tick, a sound stirs you again. Not from the device, but from your neighbor's flat. The unmistakable screech of a violin. Midnight practice, apparently. She's terrible. You roll your eyes and stuff cotton into your ears. A trick borrowed from an 1870s article on nighttime peace. It's not elegant, but it works. The ticking becomes a soft vibration in your skull. Your breath evens out. You lie still. The candle burns low. You do not move. The room is warm. Your limbs are heavy. Somewhere a violin squeaks, then stops. You almost smile. The disc turns. Your mind, DOESN, single quotes T. Sleep, when it arrives, is soundless and slow. It slips in between ticks, fills the space the rhythm carved out for it. Not with drama or dreams, just quiet. Tonight, sleep smells like pine and something vaguely flammable. You've gone rustic. No clockwork, no belts, no opium light. Instead, you're embracing nature, or at least the Victorian idea of it. You're halfway through preparing what the household sleep. Companion, 1878, refers to as a forest-born soak. In modern terms, a turpentine bath. Yes, that turpentine. The same sharp-smelling substance used to thin paint and polish floors. But in the 1800s, it was also recommended carefully diluted as a soak to stimulate circulation and allegedly quiet the nerves. Just a few drops, they said. Enough to fill your bathwater with the invigorating scent of pine resin, without, peeling your skin off. Your bath is drawn. You've added 3 drops, okay? Maybe 4 of turpentine oil, along with a small muslin sachet of rosemary, juniper, and dried pine needles. The water clouds slightly, like ghostly tea. You dip your toe in. Too warm. But sleep awaits, so in you go. Victorians believed certain scents helped reset the body's inner sleep clock. Pine was considered grounding. Rosemary, clarifying. And turpentine? That was supposed to chase off nervous vapors and invigorate sluggard minds. Historians still argue whether these baths were truly medicinal, or just creative ways of making bath time feel therapeutic. But for now, the scent is oddly comforting, like old wooden chests and wind in cathedral rafters. You sink deeper into the water, careful not to submerge your nose. The sensation is both soothing and faintly stinging. A little forest. A little chemical warfare. You try not to think about fire hazards. Upstairs, you've also prepared something new. A pillow filled with pine smoke. Yes, pine-smoked pillows. You dried small slivers of resinous pine, then slowly burned them in a tin over coals earlier this evening. The smoke was captured in a linen pillowcase hung like a windsock. Once it cooled and aired out a bit, you stitched it shut and plumped it up. The idea was to infuse the sleeper with woodland calm, or at least give them something to focus on besides their racing thoughts. You exit the bath, pink and slightly tingly, and wrap yourself in an oversized flannel robe. Your skin smells like a winter forest after a thunderstorm. It's not unpleasant, just bold. Climbing into bed, you rest your head on the pine-smoked pillow. The scent is subtle now, like an old Christmas tree hiding behind your curtain. You breathe it in, deeply. Victorian remedies had an obsession with the countryside. Urban sleep, they claimed, was poisoned by smoke, stress, and sin. But country sleep, now that was the real thing. A peasant's slumber, honest and whole. They tried to recreate it with fresh herbs, fireplace ash, open windows, yes, even in winter, and pillows stuffed with everything from hay to dried hops. Anything to pretend the city wasn't squeezing them like a corset. Tonight, you've joined that tradition. The pillow is firm, which you weren't expecting. It crinkles faintly as you shift, like sleeping on a sack of incense. Still, there's a kind of comfort in its novelty. You light a single candle. The flame dances, and you watch the shadows sway on the ceiling, faint pine-scented ghosts doing a lazy waltz. Your breath slows. You feel warm, wrapped in the scent of trees and just a hint of turpentine. You can't feel your elbows, which might be normal or might be left over from the bath. Either way, you let it happen. You think about forest cures abroad. In Germany, they called it Waldlufber forest air baths. Patients were sent to coniferous groves to walk, breathe, and do absolutely nothing. In Japan, it's called Shinrin-yoku today forest bathing. No surprise the Victorians wanted to recreate that peace in their soot-streaked bedrooms. You reach under your pillow and retrieve a small cloth packet, dried moss and fir resin, a folk tradition borrowed from Scottish Highlands, where it was believed that sleeping on earth memory helped ground the spirit. You place it on your chest and close your eyes. The candle flickers again. Outside, wind brushes the shutters. You imagine branches swaying, leaves murmuring their quiet song. Somewhere in your half-dream, a pinnacone falls and rolls gently downhill. You don't even hear the pillow crinkle anymore, just your breath in, out, like tree limbs moving with the breeze. You slip into sleep wrapped in a forest that doesn't exist. Your skin tingling with resin, your pillow perfumed with ancestral guesses, and your dreams a little more mossy than usual. By now, your nights have taken on a rhythm bizarre, pine-scented, slightly electrified, but a rhythm nonetheless. And tonight? Tonight is about air, not just any air. Sleepy air. Purified, re-oxygenated, ozone-rich air that crackles softly with invisible Victorian science. Because in this chapter of your nightly quest, you've acquired the most fashionable, most suspiciously humming piece of sleep equipment yet, the ozone generator. It sits in the corner of your room like a modest metal bread box, crossed with an exorcism kit. There's a faint scent of metal and singed cotton. When you first plugged it in wound it up. Really, it sparked slightly and gave a faint sizzle, like bacon had made a deal with the devil. This contraption is meant to cleanse your environment. The 19th century was obsessed with bad airs, miasmas, fogs, vapors, and mysterious atmospheric poisons believed to seep into your lungs and disrupt your body's harmony. You couldn't see them, but you could certainly blame them for everything from poor digestion to nightmares. So, to sleep better, Victorians invented devices to manipulate the very air you breathed. Your ozone generator emits tiny pulses that, supposedly, fill the room with restorative ether. It smells faintly like a lightning storm and just a little bit like the time you scorched toast and tried to pretend it was intentional. Historians still argue whether these machines had any real effect on air quality, or whether the odd smells and subtle buzzing simply felt like something important was happening. Either way, you're leaning in. You crack your window slightly, because the manual recommends airflow for ozone drift. The breeze is cool and damp, carrying with it a trace of chimney smoke and the laughter of someone 3 streets away. You dim your oil lamp. The generator hums steadily. It's not unpleasant, more like a purring beetle in the corner of your room. Its brass vents gleam, warm to the touch. And then you remember the sleep mask. Not just any mask, of course. This one is infused with charcoal padding and lined with silver thread. It claims to filter the dream field. That sounds made up. But then again, so does snail syrup, and you still have a half jar of that in the cupboard. You place the mask gently over your eyes, pulling the silk straps around the back of your head. It's soft, cool, and completely blocks out the flickering shadows from the ozone glow. There's something oddly modern about it, like Victorian cyberpunk. You, masked and surrounded by softly buzzing science, lying in a bedroom half filled with artificial forest air, you breathe in. The scent is sharper now, a little medicinal, but strangely clean. The Victorians also experimented with air-infusing herbs, placing bowls of dried lavender or wormwood beneath the bed, or suspending sachets soaked in camphor above doorways. A few even suggested burning cloves or thyme for 10 minutes, then sealing the room to trap the beneficial vapors. You tried that once. It ended with coughing. This is better. The ozone buzzes softly in the background, like a hypnotist too polite to say anything out loud. Your body is still, but your thoughts drift gently. Like ash in still air, you imagine the air becoming a blanket, wrapping around you, thick and soft, like wool made of fog, somewhere in the haze of your imagination. A Victorian doctor in a frock coat and wire spectacles leans over and says, "Excellent breathing, my dear." You're not even surprised. You shift under the blanket. Your wrists are warm. Your toes curl slightly. The mask presses softly over your face, like the palm of someone you trust. You wonder if all the ozone is real, or if your brain just thinks it smells fresher in here. Either way, you'll take it. One less excuse to stay awake. Victorian sleep theory, after all, treated the body like a bellows, full of air, constantly shifting, always in need of balancing. If the air was wrong, nothing else worked. Breathing clean, purified air meant breathing in sleep itself. At least, that's what the pamphlet said. You take another deep breath, slow, deliberate. The generator hums. You hum back, softly. A strange duet between body and machine. Then silence. Not total silence, but enough. Your brain settles. The edges of your thoughts blur. You forget about the ozone, the mask, the room itself. You imagine you're floating. Not flying, not swimming, just suspended. In air thick with dreams. The kind of sleep that holds you lightly, like a balloon tethered to a single string. Your final thought is this: if this machine gives you strange dreams tonight, you'll blame the Victorians. But you'll probably use it again anyway. You wake up feeling blue. Not emotionally. Literally. Because sometime between your midnight breathing ritual and your fifth ozone-enhanced dream, the moonlight filtering into your room passed through your newest experiment, cobalt glass. Deep, ocean-colored panes that now replace your east-facing window glass. They cast everything: your quilt, your slippers, even your elbows in an otherworldly, almost holy shade of blue. Why? Because Victorians believed blue light, particularly the kind produced by filtered moonbeams or sun through colored glass, had special healing powers. It was the basis of what they called color therapy or chromotherapy. And in this phase of your nocturnal adventures, you're basking in it. The window is open just a crack, letting in a breeze tinged with chimney smoke and far-off baking bread. But the light is blue. Pale, calming, oddly cosmic. And not just the window. On the floor beside you sits your second installation, a lunar mirror. This contraption, essentially a polished disc mounted at a precise tilt, was intended to reflect moonlight directly onto the sleeper's face, to capture the rhythm of lunar breath, one 1884 brochure put it, which sounds poetic until you realize it means beaming the moon into your eyeballs while you try to doze. The mirror catches the moon just right tonight. A pale, quivering glow paints the ceiling like milk spilt over velvet. Victorians thought moonlight had different qualities at different times of the month. Waning moons were said to draw out melancholy. Full moons could wake madness. But the crescent moon? That was the gentle friend of dreamers. You didn't plan this, but tonight you're in crescent territory. You lie back against your pillow, hands crossed gently on your chest, half expecting a seance to break out. But no, just you, the moon, and a room the color of deep-sea glass. Historians still argue whether these lunar reflectors were sincere attempts at therapy, or just fashionable whims of the wealthy. But someone once paid 50 guineas to have their entire conservatory paneled in blue glass. For sleep, that's commitment. Your own setup cost significantly less. The blue window was repurposed from a stained glass accident at the church across the square. The mirror? Lifted from a discarded dressing table and polished with lavender oil, until you could see your own insomnia in it. You tried to breathe with the moon. Slow, silvery, not too deep. This is not the night for exertion. To enhance the moon harmony, you've also draped your canopy in gauze, soaked lightly with peppermint and geranium water. It smells clean, like soap pretending to be a flower. You remember reading that blue was considered the coldest color in Victorian theory, perfect for overexcited minds and overheating bodies. Red was for passion, yellow for digestion, blue, Blue was the sleeping pill of the spectrum. You're not sure the color is actually cooling you, but it's doing something. The shadows feel softer. The air is calm. Even your breathing slows in sync with the steady, moonlit pulses of the night beyond your window. Of course, not everyone embraced the moonlight. In some circles, it was feared. Lunacy comes from Luna, after all. Tales of sleepwalkers, ghost sightings, and sudden fainting spells under a full moon were common. Some even covered their windows with black cloth to block lunar influence. You, however, are clearly made of braver or perhaps sleepier stuff. You shift beneath your blanket. Your pillow tonight is a soft velvet one you borrowed from the parlor. The usual pine smoke cushion is airing out after last night's bath-scented adventures. This one smells like nothing in particular. Just fabric. Safety. The blue light creeps across the ceiling. Like a slow tide. You consider the possibility that you are becoming a plant. Photosynthesizing sleep from filtered moonlight. Rooted, still, growing dreams instead of leaves. Somewhere outside, a horse's hooves clatter gently on cobblestone. A cart, perhaps the milkman's early delivery, or the night soil collector. You try not to think about that. The room pulses faintly with light and shadow. You turn your face toward the window, eyes half-lidded. The cobalt hue is thick now, like you're underwater. Your thoughts drift accordingly. Seaweed sways. A jellyfish dreams. Your body becomes a stone, warmed not by fire, but by the slow burn of starlight. You think briefly about painting your entire bedroom blue. Then you think about sleep. Then you stop thinking altogether. And somewhere beyond the window, the moon smiles, dim and crooked. Tonight, it's your forehead's turn. You've done the pine. You've done the snail. You've buzzed, brewed, and bathed in substances best left in hardware stores. But tonight, you're returning to something tactile, soft, gentle, maybe even sensible. You're perched at your vanity, folding a damp linen cloth. Into it, you've layered thin slices of cucumber, mint leaves, and this one's new, a dab of vinegar and rose water. Not for your salad, for your sleep. The Victorians called this concoction a cooling compress for the overactive brow. You lie back, gently pressing the cloth across your forehead. It's cold, sharp at first, then strangely comforting, like being kissed by a ghost who understands boundaries. This was a popular nighttime ritual among the sensitive and the stylish. Cooling the forehead was believed to draw mental heat away from the brain, easing intrusive thoughts. An overheated mind was seen as the root of restlessness. Women were warned not to think too hard in the evening or worse. Read novels lest they boil their intellects and invite insomnia. Historians still argue whether these forehead compresses were effective or simply an elaborate way to avoid looking like you were doing absolutely nothing about your sleep troubles. But whether they worked or not, they offered ritual. And that's half the battle. As the coolness sinks into your temples, you close your eyes. The smell is lovely roses and vinegar, like floral pickles. You don't hate it. And tonight, there's movement. Actual movement. You're stretching, that's right. You've pushed back the chairs in the drawing room. You've spread out a mat well, a scratchy wool blanket, and you're preparing for the most refined insomnia exercise of the age. Candlelight. Calisthenics. This wasn't called yoga yet. In Victorian England, it was more likely described as ladies' evening floor exercise. But the shapes are familiar. Gentle bends, long exhales, knees tucked to chest, arms overhead. All performed slowly, deliberately, by the glow of a single taper candle. Victorian women's magazines sometimes printed full illustrations of these exercises. They promised better sleep, improved complexion, and toned nervous energy. They were often accompanied by breathing instructions like inhale as if greeting a rose, and exhale with ladylike resolve. You follow along not perfectly, but sincerely. The compress slips a little, but you press it back in place as you fold yourself into what feels like a friendly pretzel. You wobble. You breathe. You don't fall. Victorian stretching, while not as physically demanding as modern yoga, had its own gentle elegance. There were moves like the swan's reach, the reclined daisy, and the quiet clock. You just invented that last one. But honestly, it fits. You move slowly. The floor is cold, your limbs are warm. There's a beautiful contrast between effort and ease. And just behind your candle, a small bowl of lavender water steams softly. It sends up tiny waves of perfume that drift around you like sleepy fog. You remember reading that. Charles Dickens was a devoted night walker. He believed that movement helped reorder the brain. When he couldn't sleep, he'd walk through the streets of London for hours, eventually collapsing into bed just before sunrise. That sounds exhausting. You prefer the indoor version. Back on the blanket, you hold your final pose. Flat on your back, arms open, legs still. The candle flickers beside you. The forehead cloth cools again, now slightly wilted. You feel finished. You crawl back into bed. No pine pillow tonight. No wires. No snail. Just you, your floral forehead rag, and a quietly stretched body that has nothing left to prove. You lie down. The room is utterly quiet. You consider doing a few more stretches, but the bed has claimed you. It holds you like a favorite book, gently dog-eared, still warm from someone else's hands. The compress falls off. You let it. You don't move. You don't need to. Your breath is slow, even. The room smells faintly of vinegar and candle wax and peppermint-tinged linens. And for the first time in a long while, your limbs feel truly yours, uncoiled, comfortable, still. Sleep, when it comes tonight, is neither strange nor sudden. It just arrives, like an old friend letting themselves in, leaving their boots by the door, and settling in beside you without a word. Tonight, your ritual begins before the sun even sets. You've planned for this one all-day collected petals from the garden. Brewed tea from a tin so old it might have belonged to your great-aunt's ghost. And plumped your feather mattress to the Victorian recommended ratio of softness sufficient to cradle sorrow. Yes, we've reached the final tier of the peculiar pyramid, the quiet trinity of poppy tea, bedtime prayers, and obsessive mattress optimization. It starts with the poppy. You stir dried red petals into a pot of steaming water, watching the infusion turn from clear to blush, blush to rust, rust to something resembling melted velvet. The Victorians loved their teas, especially the ones that dabbled dangerously near the opiate family tree. Unlike laudanum, poppy tea was gentler, but only slightly. Too much, and you risked waking up in the next century. But you've measured carefully. 2 pinches, not 3. Steeped 7 minutes. No sugar excites the spirit, according to your trusty lady's sleep companion. You sip, bitter, earthy, like drinking from the underside of a rosebush. You feel it first in your shoulders, a melt, then in your spine, which seems to sigh. By the time you've finished the cup, you're somewhere between conscious and candle. Now for the prayers. You kneel beside the bed, not because you're devout, but because something about folding the body leads the mind to believe in surrender. Your prayer isn't long, just a few whispered thoughts. Gratitude for warmth, forgiveness for petty grudges, and a request simple, quiet for one solid, dreamless night. Victorians believed in bedtime prayer with surprising fervor, not always for spiritual reasons. Some saw it as a nightly confession to cleanse the soul before dreams opened the mind to visions and visitations. One popular prayer warned of the dark angel who whispers when one's guard is down. Comforting. You climb into bed, and now. The final variable. The feathers. Your mattress is layered with care bottomed with wool, middled with straw, topped with goose down. But tonight, you've plucked out 2 handfuls and redistributed them toward the edges. Why? Because according to a fringe but fascinating 19th century pamphlet, feather drift and sleep directionality, the density of feathers should mimic the tides of the moon. If you sleep too deep in the middle, you'll dream too hard. Sleep light at the sides, wake refreshed. Historians still argue whether this feather logic had any foundation, or whether it was just a clever excuse for lumpy beds. But you've followed the instructions to the letter, fluffed with clockwise spirals, smooth only with the back of the hand. Feather math, as absurd as it is, somehow feels comforting. You settle in. No more gadgets. No more jars. Just your mattress, your prayers, your puppy. You stare at the ceiling. It's still tinted faintly blue from the window glass. The moon is absent tonight, hidden behind clouds like a shy hostess. That's fine. You're not waiting for it anymore. You're warm. Perfectly so. Not a bead of sweat, not a single chill. The air is silent, heavy with the scent of old linen and faint floral bitterness. You turn to one side. The feathers shift supportive. Not smothering. The prayers echo quietly in your mind, like footsteps in a long, dark hallway that lead only to sleep. Your thoughts drift. You remember your first night, the laudanum milk, the creaky toast. It feels centuries ago now. You remember the belt, the clockwork hypnotist, the snail syrup. You shudder, the forest pillows. You've been through every absurd, sincere, over-engineered ritual the Victorian world could conjure, and somehow, despite all of it, you're still awake. Barely. You feel the sleep, now as a descent, but as a soft curtain being drawn. Your limbs are heavy in the nicest way. Your breath moves without asking, and the edges of your awareness have gone feathery, ungracpable. This is it. No more pine. No more peppermint. Just peace. And now, the room softens. Your heartbeat slows. Each breath feels like a lullaby, sung from somewhere outside time. The candle's flame, if you even remember lighting one, has burned low, its wick curled inward like a sleeping cat. Shadows stretch across the ceiling, no longer dramatic, just present. Just part of the hush. Nothing buzzes. Nothing drips. No machines. No clever frames. Just you and the sound of fabric against mattress. A whisper of cotton. The crinkle of linen shifting ever so slightly as you exhale. Let it go now. All the rituals. All the formulas. Let them fade into the folds of your memory. You've tried them all, some strange, some absurd, some almost magic. But in the end, sleep never cared about elegance or effort. Only that you were willing to meet it halfway. Your pillow holds the shape of your thoughts. Your fingers relax. Your jaw unclenches. The room doesn't need to be silent anymore, because inside you, the noise has gone still. There's nothing else to do. Nothing left to prove. The world outside continues, but for now, it asks nothing of you. And you, wrapped in quiet and coolness, offer nothing in return. Just breath. Just warmth. Just stillness. And sleep. Sweet, steady sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.